All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today, we're tackling cybersecurity and SharePoint online training. Specifically, we're looking at a website by Bert Blevins. It's a really cool mix of articles and YouTube videos.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of those videos are from this month even, so it's all super up to date.
Very
ready to get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so the website, it really starts by making the strong argument about how important SharePoint online training is for, well, any company, really. What really jumped out at you about that part?
I think what really stood out was just how much emphasis there is on the fact that this type of training is essential for both productivity and security. SharePoint Online, it's really at the core of so many organizations. Their workflows, their automation, content management. This training is really all about unlocking its potential.
Yeah, and it's not just theoretical benefits either. We're talking increased productivity, efficiency, better data security and compliance. It's really about empowering those employees and making sure everything runs smoothly.
Absolutely. And one example that really illustrates this well is the use of Power Automate. Imagine giving your team the ability to automate those repetitive tasks. Those ones that eat up so much time. It frees them up for more strategic work, and it reduces those errors too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So training can actually be this powerful tool for boosting security.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the expert behind all this, Bert Blevins. His background is pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's definitely not just some tech enthusiast. He's a seasoned entrepreneur, educator, with a really deep understanding of cybersecurity. An MBA, certified cyber insurance specialist, leadership roles in all sorts of professional organizations. He brings a ton of credibility to the table.
And his expertise, it goes way beyond just the basics. He's into information architecture, collaboration, even private blockchain technologies. So we're definitely in good hands, I'd say. Especially as we move into the cybersecurity part of this deep dive. This is where things get really interesting, I think. What were your first thoughts on the YouTube videos, particularly those recent ones about current cybersecurity trends?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but what struck me right away is just how relevant, how timely they are. Blevins doesn't just talk theory. He dives into real-world solutions, real-world trends, the stuff that's shaping the cybersecurity landscape right now.
Okay, let's start with one that I think sounds super interesting. Just-in-time permissions, or JIT. What's the big deal with JIT, and why should our listeners care about it?
So JIT is this fantastic way to enhance security. And the way it does it is by granting access to sensitive resources only when it's absolutely necessary. Think of it like this. Instead of giving someone a key to a building, that they can use anytime, you give them a temporary key card that only works for a specific room and only for a limited time. This drastically reduces the window of vulnerability.
So it's all about minimizing risk by limiting access, right? I can definitely see how valuable that would be today with all these data breaches happening more and more. But then how do you manage all these temporary permissions, especially in a large organization?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. And that's where Blevins introduces Delinea. It's a specific PAM solution. That's Privileged Access Management solution. And it addresses this very challenge.
Okay, PAM, Delinea. It seems like we're starting to peel back the layers of the cybersecurity onion here. What exactly is Delinea, and how does it fit into this whole PAM world?
It's a really powerful suite of tools designed to manage, secure, and monitor access to those really critical systems in an organization. Think of it as like a sophisticated control panel for all those keys we were just talking about, making sure they're only used by the right people at the right times.
So instead of having this jumble of keys with no system for tracking who has what, Delinea brings order and control to the process. It's like having a master key system where you can grant and revoke access easily and track everything that's happening.
Exactly. And one of the things that Blevins highlights about Delinea is this unlimited admin mode. It sounds kind of risky at first, right?
Yeah, giving admins unlimited access feels like you're just opening the door for trouble.
Right, but it's not about giving everyone, free rein. It's about giving those administrators the tools and the oversight they need to manage that privileged access effectively. Imagine you have a security camera system that not only records everything, but also lets you instantly see who accessed what and when. That's the kind of visibility and control we're talking about.
So it's like having the security guard who can see everything in real time. and can intervene if something looks off. Okay, that makes more sense. But what about the more technical side of security? In those critical systems, I'm thinking about Red Hat Linux specifically, which Blevins mentions in his videos.
Yeah, he really emphasizes the importance of password rotation in those Linux environments.
Yeah.
Especially for those privileged accounts.
Yeah.
He even gives a step-by-step guide for rotating passwords in Red Hat. It's a really practical resource for anyone who's managing those systems.
Super helpful, yeah. Especially for those who aren't Linux experts. It's one thing to say rotate your passwords, it's another to actually show people how. But password rotation is just one piece of the puzzle. What about things like multi-factor authentication?
He gets into that too, specifically focusing on OAuth, OTP, MFA. That's one-time password, multi-factor authentication. It's a really powerful way to add an extra layer of security on top of those rotated passwords.
I know about multi-factor authentication in general. You need something, like a password and something you have, like your phone. But how does this OTP, MFA actually work?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. You use an app on your phone or some other device to generate a unique code. It's time sensitive. And then you enter that along with your password when you're logging in, like a constantly changing lock.
So even if someone steals your password, they still can't get in without that code. Double locked door for your sensitive data.
Exactly. And Blevins even shows you how to set it up using popular authenticator apps, so it's easy for anyone to implement. But, securing individual accounts, that's just one part of it. What about those hidden risks that might be lurking in those more complex environments, especially in the cloud?
Yeah, good point. Things can get kind of messy in the cloud. All those services and applications, all connected. How do you even find those potential security blind spots?
Well, that's where cloud identity discovery comes in. Blevins has a video specifically on this, and he highlights how important it is to get a really clear picture of who has access to what within that cloud environment. It's like shining a light into all the corners of your digital world.
I like that analogy. So it's about mapping out those connections, all those permissions, to identify those vulnerabilities before someone else can.
Right. And, we keep coming back to Delinea, and I think it's worth understanding why it plays such a central role in this privileged access management. And Blevins really sees it as a valuable tool for organizations to improve your security.
Right. It's all starting to connect now. So Delinea isn't just a password vault or a monitoring tool. It's this comprehensive solution for multiple aspects of privileged access management. But how are organizations actually using it to boost their security?
He mentioned several applications. One that stood out to me was the use of Delinea's PM, password fillers. These tools help organizations move away from those sticky notes and spreadsheets, where they often keep sensitive passwords and manage them in a more secure, centralized way.
PM password fillers. I gotta admit, the name doesn't exactly scream cutting-edge security. But I'm guessing there's more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely. Don't let the name fool you. They're incredibly effective. They act like secure vaults for those critical passwords. So users don't even need to know them. This reduces human error. Phishing attacks, those accidental reply-all disasters.
So like a digital bodyguard for your passwords, making sure only authorized people can access them.
Exactly.
But how do organizations know if their Delinea setup is actually working? How do they measure their success?
That's where Delinea's success score secrets come in. This feature gives organizations a way to assess their security posture and find areas for improvement.
So like a report card for your security efforts. You get a grade based on how well you're implementing PM and using Delinea to its full potential. I like that, having a way to actually track your progress.
It's really valuable for organizations that take security seriously, and it shows Delinea's commitment to not just providing tools, but guidance and support for their customers as well. But Delinea doesn't exist on its own. Blevins also highlights its integration with Entra ID, which is Microsoft's identity and access management platform.
Entra ID, we've talked about that before. That's all about managing user identities and permissions, right? How does that fit in with Delinea and this whole PM thing?
The integration between Delinea and Entra ID is a real game changer for organizations that want to streamline their security and have a more unified approach to identity management, like weaving together different threads of security to create a stronger fabric.
Okay, I'm seeing the bigger picture now. So Delinea handles the privileged access, making sure those super important accounts are locked down, while Entra ID provides that broader framework for all user identities and permissions. And by integrating those two, you get this more comprehensive, coordinated security system.
Exactly. It's about breaking down those silos
Yeah.
that often exist between different security tools and creating a more seamless, effective approach.
This is all fascinating stuff, but I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. Maybe this is a good place to pause and pick up the rest of this deep dive in part 3. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. There's still so much to explore, especially when it comes to disaster recovery and building those resilient secrets that Blevins keeps talking about.
Great. We'll be back soon with more insights and takeaways from Bert Blevins' cybersecurity wisdom. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into SharePoint online training and cybersecurity. We've talked about the importance of training employees and the ins and outs of privileged access management and solutions like Delinea. But there's one more thing we got to talk about: disaster recovery. It's something Bert Blevins really stresses in his videos, and honestly, it's something every organization should be thinking about, no matter how big they are or what industry.
You're absolutely right. Disaster recovery often gets overlooked until it's too late. Blevins actually has a whole video dedicated to it, focusing on how to protect that sensitive data and those systems in case of a disaster, whether it's a natural disaster, a cyber attack, or even just a system failure. It's about having that plan B, a safety net for when things go wrong.
And that safety net, she calls it resilient secrets. What exactly are those, and why are they so important for disaster recovery?
So in this case, secrets refer to those key bits of information that companies need to protect. Passwords, encryption keys, API keys, all that sensitive data needed to access and manage systems. It's like the digital keys to the kingdom. And resilient secrets are about making sure this information is stored safely, managed properly, and accessible, even when things go sideways.
So it's not enough to just have strong passwords and encryption. You need to make sure they're protected and that you can get to them if something happens to your main systems, like having a backup key stashed away somewhere safe, just in case you lose your main set. But how do you actually make these secrets resilient?
Blevins recommends a multi-layered approach, combining different strategies to build this really robust and resilient framework. So one layer might be using a secure password manager, like Delinea, to store and manage those sensitive credentials. Another layer could be encrypting that sensitive data, both when it's moving and when it's stored. And another layer could be multi-factor authentication to stop unauthorized access, even if someone gets a hold of a password or key.
So it's like building a fortress around those secrets with all these layers of protection, making it as hard as possible for anyone to get in. But even with the strongest fortress, there's the human factor. What about the employees? How do we make sure they're prepared to handle these security issues and make the right decisions, especially in a crisis?
You're right. Technology can only take you so far. The human element is key. That's where training and awareness are crucial. Blevins really hammers home the importance of educating employees about the best cybersecurity practices, recognizing phishing scams, handling data responsibly, reporting suspicious stuff. It's about giving them the tools to actively participate in security.
So instead of blindly following rules, they need to understand why those rules exist and feel confident making smart choices about security. It's about creating a culture of security awareness where everyone understands that this is a team effort.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. What are your main takeaways, and what should our listeners keep in mind as they navigate this super complex and always changing world of cybersecurity? I think the biggest takeaway is that cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. There's no one perfect answer. And the threats are, well, they're always changing. It's about staying informed, adapting, and constantly improving your defenses. And remembering that we're all in this together. By sharing knowledge, working together, and supporting each other, we can make the digital world a safer place for everyone.
That's a great point. Knowledge is power, and when we share it, that power grows even stronger. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those defenses up. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into knowledge.